struggling to market to your ideal clientele with old branding that worked for you years ago? This branding gap is playing a huge role in your current client conversion rate, and you may not even know it. We've heard it all before. My website doesn't matter that much, or I'll get to it eventually, but years go by and yet you're still asking the same question. Why am I still working the same weddings at the same price point with no growth? So what does your current brand and website say about you? Does your copy actually captivate your ideal clientele, or are they quickly closing your site and connecting with someone else? It's time to give your brand some pampering at the Creative Cabana, your all-inclusive strategy and design studio. With over a decade of experience as wedding vendors, their full-service team knows exactly how powerful great branding can be for your business growth. Whether you need a complete brand refresh or just a touch-up with services like website design, brand identity, or copywriting, they've got you covered. And for filmmakers out there, they also specialize in logo animations so that your film can feel that much more elevated. This is something I just invested in, and it's brought an entirely new look to my films. So you poured your heart and soul into your business. Now it's time for a brand that connects with your customers on every level. Visit their website today and use our discount code WGY300 for $300 off your first project at creativecabana.co. Welcome to the We Got You podcast, a network curated for wedding photographers and filmmakers that dives deep into the strategies and tactics to transitioning a side hustle in the wedding industry into a full-time, thriving career. We're your hosts, luxury wedding filmmaker Emma K. Films and luxury destination wedding photographer Hannah Brook Photography. It wasn't too long ago that we picked up our cameras for the first time, having absolutely no idea where it would lead us. Years later, we're traveling the globe for beautiful destination weddings, build our dream lifestyles, and run multi-six-figure careers. It didn't happen overnight and it wasn't easy, but it is attainable and so worth it. And we're ready to teach you our strategies. Covering a variety of topics from both our firsthand experiences and reputable guest speakers' insights crucial for business growth, we're exploring the art of marketing within your niche, discussing effective ways to attract and retain clients, leverage social media, and build a strong online presence, and so much more. We're not shying away from talking through the challenges of the wedding industry and offering realistic solutions to navigate them successfully. We emphasize the importance of networking, establishing meaningful relationships with clients, and continuously honing one's craft to stand out in a competitive market. This is the We Got You podcast.
Hello, welcome to another episode on the We Got You podcast. It feels like forever since we have recorded on here, which is why trying to start this episode has not been very easy. It just feels like so long since we've been on here getting to chat with you guys and talk and really just like share some more tips, tricks, everything, when in reality it's been a week, which is really crazy. Time doesn't exist when you're in the middle of like busy season. I feel like sometimes I feel like
it really doesn't.
I haven't seen like friends in 2 months and they're like, Hannah, we saw you 5 days ago. And I'm like, wow. And then it's like so opposite when you're in off season because you have so much more time, I feel like, to give to people and do things.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm seeing people all the time. And they're like, I literally haven't seen you in 2 months. And I'm like, what is happening with life? So we're carrying that into podcast recording. Today is a fun morning. We're both still waking up, but we're going to be talking all about pricing a travel wedding today. And this is something that Em and I both really love to talk about because I feel like as you get more into whatever niche you are exploring, whether that is destination weddings, whether that's elopements, whether that is luxury weddings, whatever that looks like, the more you're growing in your industry and in your niche, the likelihood of travel is going to increase because the chances that you are living in the city where there's these high-end luxury weddings happening within an hour of you are probably pretty unrealistic. Or if you're living or the chances that you're living like in the mountains where there's going to be all these like destination elopements, again, pretty unrealistic. So as you're growing in your business, as you're working through your niche, the chances that you are going to be traveling more often are going to be raising. So we just wanted to kind of share with you guys all of our tips, tricks, everything for pricing a travel wedding. That way, when you guys are giving quotes, sending quotes to couples who are looking for a wedding day that is going to require travel for you, maybe in the next year, maybe in the next year and a half, you're able to build them a quote and be able to quote them for travel that when the time comes that you're actually shooting the wedding, you feel confident, you feel good about it, and you feel like you've covered all of your bases and you're not cursing yourself 2 years ago for having made a pricing guide that you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that or whatnot. So we really want to watch out for future you and help you with whatever weddings that's looking like when it comes to traveling. So yeah, we're just going to start it off with some tips for you guys.
Yeah, I definitely remember like it's honestly taken me years, I feel like, to figure out what my travel pricing looked like, honestly, because I felt like there was like no exact like formula really that like I knew of when I first was starting out. People were like, oh, like your flights and your hotel and your car.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up like eating a lot of what I was paying for. Or a lot of what I was charging for. So it's like, I'm charging X amount. And then by the time that I was done traveling and done doing the wedding, like I was eating a lot of those costs and even more. And so hopefully if you are in this position, it will be helpful to just hear exactly what Hannah and I are doing and also answer. We're going to be answering a lot of questions that other people have asked us commonly for travel. Like, do you stay on site with your clients? Like, should you charge for time away from your office? When do you give a discount? What does that look like for travel? Like, when do you add travel prices onto your quote? We're going to be going through all of that. So to kind of kick it off to start, we're going to just kind of run through exactly what we charge for. There's not really a need to justify why we charge for what we charge for, but hopefully this kind of can lay out the formula for you. Aside from obviously for them paying for our wedding film or our wedding photo collection, we're charging for our flights round trip. We're charging for our hotel stay. We're charging for our rental car. We're charging a gas fee. Obviously, you don't exactly know what you're going to be paying for when it comes to like how much gas, but if you can kind of give like a fee per day that you can use to calculate. Then also thinking about your meals. This is something, again, you're not going to know exactly what you're going to spend, but you can also kind of give out like, okay, I think I'm going to spend $100 per day. For me, that's what I'll look at. This also varies depending on how many people you have in your team. If you've got a second shooter coming, obviously you have to calculate their flight. You have to calculate their hotel room, but you also want to include that meal fee to where it covers you both. Maybe that looks like $100 per day. For me, I think $100 per day is like a pretty safe amount where I'm like covered for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Obviously, pricing is going to look different if you're going to like maybe Dallas, Texas versus New York, right? Prices are different. So like genuinely think about the location and what the economy looks like there. But we're also charging for parking fees. This would be like, what does it cost to park at the airport? What does it cost to take an Uber to the airport? So that way you're calculating that. And the last thing would be either dog sitting or daycare. I don't have kids, so I'm not charging for daycare, neither does Hannah. But what does it look like if you need to charge for those things and making sure that you are including it? I think that's everything, Han, that we include in our travel pricing. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There is one other thing. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was going to say there was one other thing, which we'll talk about later, and that will be time away from office, but we'll answer that later.
Yeah, I think one of the most like misunderstandings is your second shooter and like where do they fall into the costs for travel. I always like will pay for my second shooters travel when it comes to their plane ticket. We'll share a rental car. We'll share typically a hotel room. If I am booking somebody that is in the location that I'm shooting, then I'm not paying for their travel. If they are, say it's in Texas and they live in Texas, I'm not paying for their travel because chances are they're not having to like expend any travel expenses. They're not having to stay anywhere. They are local, close to home. If I am bringing somebody from Oregon or whatnot and bringing them into a wedding day, then I'm paying those travel expenses. When it comes to the flights, hotel, rental car, and meals, I'm not paying for like dog sitting, daycare, parking fees, etc. for my second shooters, but I am making sure that I am getting them there with flights. I'm taking care of them when they're there with the hotel, rental car, and meals, and then the rest is really on them. So I think that also varies per person, and that varies if you're a videographer, photographer, which niche you're in, and what that looks like. But I know for myself and Emma, I'd love to hear what you do, but I always do flights, hotel, rental car, and meals. So again, I think that's something that like a lot of people don't really think about when it comes to your pricing. But if you're not charging for what your second shooter is going to be needing, then you're going to end up eating that cost.
Yeah. I'm always making sure that I include what my second shooter is going to like cost for travel. Even if they are going to charge me maybe like a time away from office fee, or if they're going to charge charge me like a travel day fee, that I'm putting that in there. But also too, if you're thinking like, okay, maybe my client just doesn't have that big of a budget, can you find someone local?
Yeah.
Like there are tons of weddings that I'm doing local. I've got second shooters really in like every big main area hub, whether it be like Florida, Oregon, California, Texas, those like go-to people that can save me a lot of money than charging for their travel. Now, granted, there are weddings where it's like, I know this is going to be such a big wedding. I'm going to fly out every single person because it's so important and my client has a budget that allows me to do that. But either way, if you're going to fly someone out, make sure that you're including their travel inside of your quote as well.
Yeah.
Then we kind of want to go through like some questions that we get asked a lot when it comes to traveling. And we've got like a whole long list of questions. And I think we could kind of just like dive right in and you guys can hear like both of mine and Hannah's opinions on them. But the first one is, how many days should you charge for? And I think a lot of people wonder like, okay, well, you know, this wedding is in Italy. How many days do I stay? Or this wedding is just like the state right next to me. Like, how many days should I stay? And you're not just charging them for the night of the wedding and the night before the wedding. Obviously, this is really location dependent. So, for example, I live in California. If I am doing an Oregon wedding, or honestly, if I'm doing a wedding stateside, I will at least fly in the day before. So if I've got a wedding in Oregon, if I've got a wedding in Texas, I want to make sure that I am flying out. If the wedding is on a Saturday and I'm not filming a welcome dinner, I want to make sure that I am flying out Friday morning, that I can get there as early as possible. And even then, sometimes I like to fly out 2 days before. If it's international, I know both Hannah and I like to get there 2 days before the wedding starts. And this is including like if you're doing welcome dinner and your welcome dinner is on a Friday, like you want to make sure that you are there in New York, there in Texas on Thursday morning. Like you want to make sure that you get there as soon as you can, but charge for those days because you cannot afford for any travel to go wrong. Sure, yeah, would I love to like teleport the day of the wedding and like know that I'm there? Great. Yeah, that would be fantastic, but we can't do that. We have to be there early in advance. And so you want to make sure that you are charging for that.
Yeah. And honestly, I think right now, if you're like, oh, I have a travel wedding that is in a couple months, but I didn't build that into my pricing. I didn't build the day before into my pricing. Right now, make sure that your travel is for the day before because I cannot express enough how risky it is to travel the day of shooting, whether that is shooting a session or shooting a wedding or shooting a rehearsal dinner, regardless of what your week looks like, of what you have priced them at, you need to at least be charging. Or traveling rather the day before, because when it comes to maybe you haven't built that into your pricing and you're like, in 2 months, I'm going down to, I don't know why we keep using Texas, but in 2 months I'm going to Texas and I'm shooting a wedding and I already booked my ticket for the morning of the wedding day. Right now, go and change that because the risk that is involved with traveling the day of your wedding day far outweighs the extra $100, $200 to change a flight. Em and I have both. We were flying to Amangiri and we had a flight that was delayed. What was it, like 12 hours? And we were supposed to fly out that morning to go to Arizona. And we ended up flying at 11 p.m., midnight, maybe even. And if that was the day of the proposal, we could have flown in the morning of the proposal that we were photographing and made it there by the evening. But if we had that delay, we would have missed everything. At that point, you're ruining your reputation. You're trying to find somebody to cover for you. You're paying for an associate. The cost out of pocket for that and the kind of like diminishing of your reputation that it would do is not worth it. And so right now, if you're traveling somewhere, please at least go the day before. Like Emma said, for international, we're always going 48 hours before so that we can kind of calculate for whatever happens with traveling and whatever might potentially go wrong.
I was just gonna like say too, like I think it's like I remember being in that period, and even sometimes now it's like, oh, I just want to get there and I want to get home. Like I just want to get there, I just want to like do the job and I just want to come home. But what I have found is like when you're showing up early, it gives you time to just like relax for a second. If I'm filming a welcome dinner on a Friday night and I'm getting to New York Thursday morning, I can adjust to my sleep schedule. I have plenty of time to make sure all my gear is ready. I could location scout if I want to. I can just settle in, get a really great night's rest. So that way I'm waking up and I'm feeling energized and excited, as opposed to me rushing, getting in super late that night, trying to like wake up the next morning. I didn't get very good sleep. I'm like kind of like location scouting, rushing through everything, rushing through the welcome dinner, and it doesn't set off in a good tone. So it's like, yes, I understand that. Okay, hey, you want to like get there and get back. But when it comes to travel weddings, like if you can take that extra time to do that, obviously your clients are paying for the travel. It's going to like really creatively fuel you and energize you in a way that doesn't make you feel exhausted and like you just hate your life.
Yeah. Well, and like we all want to be home a lot of the time. Like we all don't want to be like living out of a
Right.
suitcase, never home. And so I'll be that person who takes a 6 a.m. flight home the day after the wedding day, but I'm going to get there the
Yeah.
day early so that I know that I have the time. But then
Right.
I'll be heading home as soon as I can, because then I can get my work done. Then I can, sleep in my own bed. Then I can, go through all the photos and Cole and work on things in my office. And so it's really like, you don't have to stay for like 5 days. We're just saying that for the beginning part of your
Mhm.
trip, you need to give yourself that time, especially if anything goes wrong, because we can't control it.
Yeah.
I remember too when everything happened with like Southwest and the airports and stuff. I think it was like last winter. Oh my God. The relief I felt when I realized I was not traveling for like a wedding or for a workshop or anything. I was like, I could not
Yeah.
imagine this happening and trying to be somewhere for someone's
Mhm.
day or whatnot. Like the stress that would have brought and how impossible it was for people to make it to certain events terrified me. So you just never know. You never know what's going to
Yeah.
happen. The next thing we were going to move on and talk about was, should you stay on site with your clients? I think that, again, this is something where there's no like right or wrong answer. And so I think we'll just kind of share what we both do for our wedding days. When it comes to something that is stateside in the US, local, a state away, whatever that looks like, I am always booking my own place to stay, whether that's an Airbnb or a hotel. I'm trying to be pretty cost efficient, but stay close enough, especially if they have a ceremony in one location, a reception in another, they're getting ready somewhere else. I'm just trying to stay somewhere that's pretty central. So then it helps me so that I know, where everything is. I'm pretty centrally located. I can get to them pretty easily, and make it easier on myself and my second shooter. If it is somewhere international and they have a hotel block or whatnot, a lot of the times I will stay at a hotel block, because at that point, you're not trying to figure out travel in another country. Maybe if you didn't rent a car, you're trying to like hire drivers. It's a lot easier if you're already in that location. If you have a car rental, then like, again, you have a little bit more flexibility where you can stay somewhere that is pretty close. I would still stay somewhere that's a close proximity. If they are, I know for myself personally, if it's like in Italy and they've rented out a villa and it's like all of their family members and they're like, I mean, we have an extra bedroom, I would say that's totally up in the air and whatever you guys are comfortable with. I'm definitely an introvert. So sometimes I'll stay offsite. If I know them pretty well, then I'll stay on site with them. And that gives you the time to be able to document a little bit more of the setting, a little bit more of the space, especially if that is not only where they're getting ready, but also where they're getting married. It gives you time to really be able to photograph and document what that whole day and weekend really looks like, instead of just being there for like the 8 hours of a wedding day. So I would say for myself, it's very like situational depending on the couple and the location. But it should never be anything that is put on your clients to book for you. So whether it is like, hey, we have a hotel block, then you're booking that hotel block for where they're staying. Or if they don't have anything available, then you are booking whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah, and I honestly completely agree with that. I would say really like anything in the States, like I'm staying off-site. Like I have an Airbnb. Obviously, if they have a hotel block and immediately the planner's like, we have a room for you, I'm like, okay, great. Like I'll stay there. But like if not, I'm like, that's fine. I'll grab an Airbnb anywhere international. I try to stay with my clients. Same thing as Hannah. If it is like a private villa, if they've got an extra room, sure. If I can stay there, great with my team, then awesome. But if not, I try to get something close. But it's like, even for like weddings I have in Mexico, like I require like, hey, like I need to have 2 rooms on site that I can stay with you. Just it makes everything so much logistically easier. But here in the States, unless someone is like, hey, we have rooms for you, then I just factor it into my travel that I'm going to have an Airbnb that I can host my entire team, especially too when you're dealing with like bigger teams. Maybe you have an editor coming in on site. Like it is kind of nice to have like your own place where you can like all centrally work together. and you're not intruding on anyone else. But anytime that your clients do have a hotel block, I definitely think it is so worth it to grab a room or two in the hotel block. And same thing with Hannah, like you're fully responsible for taking care of that. I think it's great if they let you know, and it doesn't, like, it's very helpful to ask if they have a hotel block or if they have a hotel block, but you should be taking care of your travel. This is also not on the planner. The planner is not your planner. The planner is the client's planner. And so you're in charge of booking your flights, your rental car, your hotel. Like ask the planner questions if you need to, like, hey, like, what's the best city you recommend to stay in? But like, don't bombard the planner. And like, this is your time to do the research.
Absolutely.
And book it all yourself. Totally agree.
Are you tired of taking on the entire editing workload yourself? Are you tired of staring at a screen for days on end, feeling burnt out and creatively exhausted? Maybe you've been searching for an editing company for months now, but you can't seem to find one that can truly mimic the high-end quality of films you're looking for to deliver to your clients. If this sounds like you, we couldn't be more excited to introduce to you our friends at Wonderlust Videos. Wonderlust Videos is a post-production service for wedding filmmakers with over 10 years of experience and has served over 700 clients to date. Their full team specializes in seamless and high-quality editing for wedding filmmakers who need to take the workload off their shoulders and trust someone to create a high-end edit. As you know, we're incredibly picky about the partners we work with and the tools and resources we recommend to other photographers and filmmakers. With that being said, I myself, Emma, have gone through the process firsthand to use Wonderlust Videos myself and vet their entire process so that I can recommend them to you today with confidence. Wonderlust Videos can edit your highlight films, social media teasers, doc edits, and so much more. Their team edits on Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, so it's time to get the help you need and start outsourcing today. You can start with Wonderlust Videos right now at wonderlust-videos.com and use our code WGY10 for 10% off your first project. Does your current client delivery system feel unexciting, limiting, and boring? Maybe you're still using good old Google Drive or Dropbox to deliver your clients' wedding films. If the answer to these is yes, it's time to level up your video delivery experience with VidFlow. VidFlow is a pay-per-use online platform that allows you to deliver fully branded websites for each of your clients. While being incredibly affordable, VidFlow is accessible on mobile, desktop, and smart TVs with included long-term hosting so that your clients can truly enjoy the entire experience when receiving their wedding films. When I first found VidFlow, it was such an easy switch that truly benefited my business substantially. With so many incredible features and options for customization and personalization, VidFlow continues to wow my clients time and time again. You can find VidFlow on Instagram or visit their website at vidflow.co. Use our code WGY20 for 20% off a yearly premium membership and level up your client experience today with VidFlow.
Next question is, do you charge for time away from office or do you charge for travel days? Been asked this a lot recently. Full transparency is I did not charge for time away from office when I was first starting out. I definitely just charged for travel, and that was essentially it. I was like, they're booking me for a wedding, like I'm theirs. Now that my time is so valuable, it's honestly really important that I do charge for travel days because one, this is a day that I'm going out of my office to work and be on site that I could be in office getting a lot of work done. Two, this might be days where you're just spent traveling all day. So you're really not able to work, maybe whether it's like filming. This is also time away that you're taking away from maybe your kids or your spouse or your significant other. I think it's a very taboo question or topic in the industry because some people are like, your clients are already paying for your time. You should just throw it in there. Like that should be included. Your client shouldn't have to pay separate to take you out of the office for a day. But our time truly is so valuable. I know for myself, like I'll charge $500 for a travel day. I know people who charge more. I know people who charge less. But if I'm going to spend an entire day traveling, obviously I'm not filming, but this is an entire day outside of work, outside of my life that I am going to charge and allocate for that.
Yeah, and I honestly think this is such a personal answer to this question too, because I mean, to take a couple steps back, like I know we'll all look at our calendars and we're like, oh, I'm not doing anything that day. So like, what's the harm of traveling that day, or what's the harm of being gone that day? When in reality, you are blocking off that day for editing. And so that's not necessarily just a day you have free. Yeah, it's not a day that you might be working with clients, but that takes away 8 hours of editing that you could be doing, which takes away the editing of a quarter of a wedding day or whatever that looks like, to where now your delivery time is going to be different, and when you're expected to finish things are going to look different. And so again, just kind of calculating that. But I say this is such a personal question too, when it comes to like what you're charging for like out of office time away, because as myself with no kids, I have a dog who I am very fortunate to have family close by who is able to look after him whenever we're gone and everything. And my husband is working a 9 to 5 where it's pretty easy on a dog. We have the luxury of, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Yes, I'm having time away from editing, and so I'm charging for being out of office, but I'm not charging for anything on top of that. There are people who are to motherhood where if you have a newborn, that's going to look significantly different. Yeah. If you have 3 kids and maybe they're all older, but you have multiple kids, that's going to look again very different. If you are in the middle of wedding season where you have a massive backlog and you are trying to make sure everything is done on time, that's going to look very different. If you're in your off season and you're like, hey, this is somewhere I'm dying to go, that again is going to look very different. So like, I hate not giving you guys numbers to go off of, but at the same time, it is so personal where I really want you to think that, okay, what is my situation? Yeah. What does that look like for me? What am I stepping away from? And what am I stepping towards? So if you're going to travel, are you traveling to somewhere that you're dying to go to and never been and like wanting to take that to be away from home because that's somewhere you're really like anxious and like dying to go to? Maybe anxious isn't the right word, but or is that somewhere where you're like, okay, I've been here before and like I'm super excited about it, but this is what I'm leaving behind, and there's work I'm missing, there's kids I'm missing. And so really think about, what is your situation? What are you walking away from? What are you walking towards? And how would that equate for you to make it worth it at a price point?
Right. And just being too like, again, like this is such a taboo topic. Like I didn't charge a time away from office fee when I was starting out in my first few years. I didn't. But obviously, like even for me just to say like, yeah, I charge like $500, sometimes more for a time away from office, depending on how long it is. Like for a lot of people, like that's out of their client's budget to pay for that. And so like you really have to think like, okay, like where you with your price point, what does this look like for you? How much do you want to do this wedding? How many days are you giving up? Again, I'm not charging X amount just to go film the wedding because they're already paying me to film the wedding. This is like, hey, I'm going to go spend a week in Italy. You know, maybe there's multiple sessions. Like I'm charging for my travel time. Hey, I'm going to fly out to New York for a wedding. Like I'm going to charge for my travel time. But again, we're not here to say like, you need to factor that into your pricing right now. It really is just like, hey, that is out there and people are doing it. But again, think about like your client's budget. Maybe how much do you want the wedding, which also kind of leads us to our next point of topic. And I think Hannah and I could do such a long episode, honestly, about discounts. And that's not what this episode is. But a lot of people go like, when do I comp travel? When should I give a discount? And like, what kind of discount are you giving? When it comes to travel, I think looking at, okay, is this location something that I really want under my portfolio? Is this location going to potentially lead you to more of your ideal clients? Obviously, is the wedding going to lead you to more of your ideal clients, right? You're asking yourself those kind of questions. I would never recommend giving a discount just because, right? Because there are some locations that it's like, that's really not going to help you get to the ideal clientele that you're looking for. So it might not be worth it. But in terms of like, what kind of discount do you give? I always think, and I know Hannah feels the same, like when it comes to travel weddings, instead of giving like a monetary discount, right? Because you're already having to pay for travel, but also thinking about like, hey, like maybe you're going to throw in like an adventure session or a couple session for them. Something like you're already going to be there the day before. So why not throw in a 2-hour couple session where you can spend time telling their story or going on an adventure or shooting something that can then help add to your photo gallery or add to your film. I think that is super beneficial to throw in there that isn't monetary. But Hannah, I'd be curious to know, like, have you ever just done a wedding for travel? Like I know that I have, and like kind of what you think about that when it comes to like being a new photographer or filmmaker who's like, hey, I have a client who reached out who says like, would I just do it for travel? Like, when is that applicable?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know when I first started, I even had like a page on my website that was titled travel, and I had a list of everywhere I was going to be, and I had a list of places I was dying to go. And I distinctly remember having on the places I was dying to go, like, reach out to me and I will comp your shoot for free and you just have to pay for travel. And I know a lot of people do it vice versa, where they're like, reach out and like, you don't even have to pay for travel and you just have to pay for the session. You know, like it really does just depend on, I've seen it both ways, but I've definitely done that where there's places where when I was first starting, I really thought I was going to be a destination elopement photographer, and you need the exposure, you need the experience, you need to be able to travel to places and get content where it's like, if they're willing to pay for my travel, then that's like travel I'm not having to pay for to set up a styled shoot and get that content. Like it is serving me just as much. And so I've absolutely done that before. But I will say that as I have grown in the industry and as I've realized that destination elopements is not my niche, but I still love to travel, but then also recognizing how important my time is at home and like how much I love to be at home still and like not be on the go 24/7. I really think that if you're somebody who has a travel page, maybe that's something that you're really wanting to do, instead of having it say on that page, you know, reach out and I've got a discount for you, or reach out and I like will comp all of your travel or XYZ. Instead, share places you're really dying to go and be like, if you're traveling to these one places, reach out because I've got a deal for you and add in another session, add in an hour. You know, maybe they are wanting to go to Yosemite and they're like, yeah, we're really wanting to do the sunset. Maybe say like, hey, for free, let's just meet up in the morning and do like 30 minutes for a sunrise session, just like down in the fields and everything with the mountains in the background. You know, whatever that is where they feel like, wow, we're getting so much more value. And that's something that I wish I had done sooner, because I feel like I always thought it had to be a price point. Otherwise they wouldn't book you. But chances are if it is travel for them as well, they're already spending money. They're not like, oh, sorry, we only have like $100 for you. Like, chances are if they're spending money to travel somewhere, they want good quality photos or footage, and they are willing to pay to an extent. But if they feel like they're getting such a great deal, they are willing to pay, period. And so I think like that's something that I wish I had done sooner. But yeah, like Emma said, I feel like we could go on forever about this when it comes to like what discounts to give and everything. I really do think it changes as you grow your business, and I will never again comp travel or comp a whole session for traveling, because I feel like I'm not getting what I would have gotten in my first year of photography if I did that. And so it really is based off of where you're at and what you're looking to gain from it.
Right. And two, like if you want to learn more about discounts, episode 192 is when should you give a discount? And this I think is really beneficial whether you're traveling for a wedding or not traveling for a wedding. There's a lot in there. So if you're feeling like you've got this really cool inquiry for a destination wedding, you might have to give a discount. Like definitely encourage you. Check out episode 192.
Yes.
Last little thing that we want to talk about is when should you add travel prices? This is definitely done a few different ways. Either one, you can just send over a proposal and say, this is my film collection without travel. And then maybe you get more information from them and then they give you like where they're getting married. You can calculate travel and then you send them an additional number. Hannah and I have found it super incredibly beneficial. As soon as they send over an inquiry, we ask whatever questions we need in order to be able to put together that quote. And I mean, like, I don't need to know like, or I just really need to know like what is the nearest airport by your wedding venue, because then I can calculate my flights, I can calculate a hotel, I can calculate my rental car, I've got my gas fee I can put in, my meals fee, I can put in a rough parking fee, any like dog sitting fees. I can build their whole quote around that, to where when I am sending them a custom film proposal or when Hannah's sending them a custom photo proposal, we calculate travel into that price. So instead of me showing my clients a billion different prices, or it's like, hey, it's going to be this. Oh, and now here's another $3,000 for travel. We're literally just showing them one number. One number. And a lot of people are like, well, how do I get all that information? Like, what if I want to like talk to the couple more about it? And it's like, no, you can, the way you format your contact form. And if you have to ask them an extra question or two, maybe it's like, hey, I'm available for your wedding date, would love to like confirm that your wedding venue is is this like sometimes my clients don't give me a city, and so I have to ask what city. Most times in my contact form, they're giving me a venue and a city, so I can calculate travel right then and there. But usually the question that I'm asking is how many days of coverage are they looking for? If they're just looking for one, then I know, okay, I'm going to travel in on a Thursday and travel out on a Sunday. If they want two, then I'll travel in on a Wednesday, travel out on a Sunday. But you really can do so much of that beforehand. Maybe you don't exactly know the second shooter that you want, but you're like, hey, I'm going to bring a second shooter from California. Here's some rough pricing. And I always add a little bit on top of that, just so that way I'm making sure that I'm not going to lose money on the quote that I send them. I'm always giving them a higher amount. But I think it's so important that you crunch those numbers before you send them an actual film proposal. So that way you've got one number you're sending to them. So that way they're not being surprised with multiple. And it just gives them that like, okay, either A, they're like, great, let's move forward. Or B, they're like, I can't afford it. And then you can figure out like, do I give a discount or are they not the right client for me?
Yeah. And I also think one other, like the biggest reason why you should be including it in your package when you're sending over your package for the first time is so that they're not feeling that there's additional costs. The second biggest reason too is because if you're like, hey, here's my pricing is $8,000 and then here's my travel, it's $3,000. They're going to be like, I found a hotel that's like this cheap. Would that take any off my pricing? They're going to start picking apart that pricing. If they're like $3,000, well, like
yes.
I put together like like the flight and the hotel. Like if I just book it for you at this, it's only like $800, and they're not going to take into account all those extra things that you're adding to your travel, and they're not going to look at it from your standpoint, and they might not even prioritize it like you would. And so making sure that that is already included so that you're not spelling it out for them. Hey, it was $500 for a hotel, and they're like, actually, I found somewhere that was $400. You don't need to have that pricing picked apart, because chances are if you're able to find a hotel for $400, that extra $100 is probably going to still go somewhere. Whether that's, oh, I forgot to add the parking fee at the airport, or hey, I forgot to add the gas to get to the airport and I only added the gas for the rental car, you're still going to be able to use that somewhere, chances are. And so making sure that that is that all-inclusive so your clients truly feel like they are fully covered and it doesn't leave them room to question the numbers that you're sending them. But yeah, really kind of going through all of this. Hopefully you guys are able to pick apart some pieces that will help you guys when it comes to planning a travel wedding, or if you already have some booked and you're thinking about, okay, this is a couple months away or this is next year, like what do you need to figure out, whether you've already sent pricing or not? From there, where can you go to really make sure that you are doing the most for yourself, and also still serving your clients? But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and we will see you guys next week on the We Got You podcast. Thanks for listening to another episode of the We Got You podcast. We would absolutely love it if you could take an extra minute to leave us a review and let us know what you think. DM us a screenshot of it and we'll send you a coffee on us. If you want access to an exclusive community, rad freebies, giveaways, and wedding referrals, then join our Facebook group today. Also, if you aren't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure that you're following along on Instagram at WeGotYou_podcast to stay up to date. We'll see you next week on the We Got You podcast.